Topic of today being family dynamics. Raised with a father who does not love me, and to some people that might sound crazy, but it took me a long time to even realize this, but everything he did was for himself. He had a kid for himself. He nearly killed me and my brother. That aside though, it's given me an insight that not many people have, as in the complexities of dynamics and stuff. Partly because of my autism, maybe as well. I don't really open up much about stuff like that, right? Or what's going on inside my heart or my mind. I sort of just internalize it and go through it on my own because I know I can. It used to be that I used to be very unhealthy about it, and it brought me many mistakes. But that aside, being an emotional scapegoat. What does being an emotional scapegoat mean? Well, my friends, it means that you're basically unfairly targeted and the emotions are unfairly put onto you. Think about people who have to be responsible at a young age. I was one of those people. I had to navigate through all these feelings. Some of them, there's blurs in my memory because some feelings were so intense for me that I could just not, I just pushed it down, right? So, what comes with being an emotional scapegoat or being someone who has to be responsible all the time, which is hard, is right now struggling to talk about feelings or struggling to be serious or any of that. You always want to please someone. You always want to make sure things are fine, and you always want to micromanage things. That's not always healthy though. In fact, it isn't healthy because you neglect yourself for doing that. I've grown a lot through this, but I do get irritated when people try to do that shit on me. I'll give you some examples. Emotional scapegoat, something like that, it doesn't happen often intentionally. Sometimes it happens very unconsciously. Now, I'm gonna take a very literal example, which is my father, who I was one of those very few people who was blessed enough to be raised with a father who doesn't love. He loved, sure, but let's say his love was not for his sons, but more for himself. He would put his emotions on us. So, in the beginning of the divorce with my mother, he often would sleep. He would just sleep until he started going to bars and stuff, right? And he took us with him to these bars where he got drunk as hell. There was a lot of weird people there as well. And, for a while, that's how it went. But there was this one night where where he almost tried to, he projected himself onto us quite literally. He would threaten us, he would beat, he would, I don't remember if he ever beat us, but the verbal insults, for example, were pretty common, right? And it was always something to do with himself. Everything, it was worded in a way where you would not think it was something about himself, right? So when someone says, for example, this is going to be a very plain example. Now, every person is different, and it's not always going to be like this. But for example, I'm going to give you a very good example. If someone says, you're ugly, and I wish I don't look like you, for example. That says a lot about their own standard, because it's obvious that they care to some extent of what they present themselves and how they look like, because they legit look at you and they tell you, wow, you're ugly, I don't want to look like you, right? So they legit give you information about themselves while putting their own emotions of inaccuracy on you, I don't know if that's really a good example, but you know what I'm trying to get at, right? That's what my father was doing. He would say some shit like, I don't remember what he said, but yeah, I can't think of any examples right now when it comes to my father. I've had many people in my life come to me for advice or just as an emotional support. I never mind, because that's just who I am. I love supporting people. But there's people who want to take advantage of that. I put an immense passion and dedication into just being there for people, and there are many who wish to take advantage of that or who wish to put their emotions on me. And when it doesn't work, it frustrates them because I don't tell people. I'm not a kind person. People call me kind all the time, perhaps because of the way I word things, but I'm not a kind person. I'm a truthful person. I will tell you the truth, or what I think is the truth. What I think is the truth might be flawed, and I'm open to being flawed. I'm flawed regardless, but there was this one recent experience with this one person. I won't name any names, of course, but I'm just sharing my experience where they were like, we were talking about something, and obviously there's something aching my heart at the moment, and I don't really talk about it. I don't want to talk about it because it doesn't help, and it's just something I gotta live with, right? But I told them that I did not want to talk about it, and they turned this situation into sort of, are we lying now? You know? And then it was like, then I clarified that I just didn't want to talk about it. And then they were like you'd care if I left, so it's something like that. You know what I'm saying? And that's what I mean. Putting emotions on a person. The reason I'm making this video is to kind of vent about it, but also just to let people know they ain't alone, because I've seen a lot of shit. I've seen a lot of fucked up things. People see me as this funny guy, but you know, this funny, kind, whatever guy, wise. There's been so many things people gave me, but I would never really want to bless someone with my head. Apparently, because I don't know what it's like to be normal, right? Apparently, I feel this deeper than most people, because my senses are amplified in a good way, yes, but also a bad way, because sometimes it just overwhelms me. And so, still in my life, there are cases where people try to put their emotions on me, such as my mother or the stepdad I have. Now, it's not like my father, obviously, where they do not possess any love for me. They quite obviously do, but they put their emotions on me whenever I do whenever I just... Now, for example, if I forget something, my stepdad will yell at me and say some crazy shit, some crazy ass accusations. And my mother, whenever I talk about wanting to do something, it's usually met with some kind of rebuttal. And I can tell you why. My mother sees me as the only reason for her living, right? So I become the target of her own emotions, because if I died or something happened to me, example, like, it immediately becomes complicated. And obviously, if you're a mother and your son dies, well, that's not going to be a very good thing, is it? I don't think any parents wants their child to pass before them, you know? But it becomes a problem when a child wants to chase a certain dream and you try to micromanage their life and to make sure everything goes smoothly, when that's really not life. And I have every chance to die one day, and I'm not necessarily afraid of death. And I'm a person who likes taking risks sometimes, you know, so... And that's when that really comes out with my mother. It's like when I mention stuff like that, it immediately turns into a situation where you gotta think about me, what would happen to me if something happened to you, stuff like that. So there's another example of emotional scapegoatism, or, you know, putting me in the spotlight, like I have to deal or manage with these feelings. And to a degree, yes, I can listen, I can understand, but there's a certain boundary between listening and putting emotions on you. My mother will yell at me, do things, just be all up in my personal space, for example. Like, I do not feel like I can breathe sometimes, because it's always how you doing. Sometimes I just don't want to answer, because I can't even tell them, because if I do tell them, it turns into either false positive reassurance because they want me to be alright. And that's a good intention, sure, but Again, it's just putting these emotions on me because from some deeper side, she wants me to stay alive and whatever. And part of that comes from trauma, but that's just an immense weight on me, so talking about my own stuff becomes very difficult. And then my stepdad, who's not good with emotions, he tends to lash out. He has lashed out at me before. It pisses me off, so then I lash out back at him because, you know, I want to stand my ground, you know, especially recently. I used to just be able to ignore this stuff because I didn't care too much for myself until I started going to therapy, which is a very insightful experience, by the way. I'll talk more about that in some video, but that's when I began valuing myself more and began pushing down on the bullshit. The yelling, the screaming, the door slamming. It's a part that I do not enjoy and no longer like. It's a part of me that triggers me. You know, at times I sometimes don't even feel like I'm welcome in my own home. Or at least I don't have the space to breathe. I'm more like a burden, you know what I mean? But yeah, the point of this video was just to let y'all know I ain't alone in that feeling. I mean, there always is a way out, but I'm not sure if there's, you know, what that's gonna look like, you know. I think that's kind of the thing we struggle with. When we make a move, we never know what's it gonna look like. At least I think that's what I struggle with. You never know what a move is gonna look like, you know? Like you could choose suddenly to go across country, and you know that you know it could all happen in one day. But you know it's just weird like that, you know. You just never know, man. But yeah, this was kind of my take on this. I hope y'all enjoyed. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys later.